But anyhow, I was going to argue against this in Spanish and thus the character of the concerns of illegal immigration and their use of employment by large employers, and actually brought my Spanish interpreter, Skip Bannock, today because I needed some help with some of that issue. But what I would say, I had signed up to be against the bill as an illegal alien because, we have our local law enforcement that allows them to run throughout the community through the non-compliance with the 287G program.
All right, he wants to be famous. Put him up full mask. Here's what you just saw. Let me explain. So this man dons brownface to mock Latinos during a committee meeting. So here's what you witnessed. The man is a far-right demonstrator, David Pettinger. David was initially stopped from testifying before the committee in broken Spanish while wearing brownface makeup and clothing appearing to stereotype Latinos with handcuffs dangling from his wrists. He appeared at Monday's hearing as the committee was evaluating HB 704, a bill that would require businesses in the state to verify employees' legal status and work authorization. Shortly after David began speaking, calling the committee's vice chair, El Jaffe, and referring to other members of the committee as amigos. Democratic Representative Steve Birch called for a point of order, telling David Pettinger, quote, "This is not a performance theater here," and asking for straight testimony. The committee's vice chair, GOP Representative Josh Wheeler, then allowed David to continue. Well, you don't say. Asking for straight testimony and threatening to move on to the next speaker if David did not comply. David in Spanish said yes and asked if he could continue speaking in the language. The committee then entered a closed or at ease session where cameras monitoring the hearing were cut off. After several minutes, the hearing continued. The lawmakers allowed David to continue testifying while wearing brown face and his costume, though they asked him to continue in English only. The coalition is calling out the committee members for allowing David, a man they say has been arrested for staging protests with alarming antics in the past, to address the committee in such a fashion. The rules of decorum do not allow for demonstrations, applause, clapping, or signage during a committee meeting. Now, before we get into outrage from others, very simple. The rules of decorum do not allow for demonstrations. So let's say somebody wants to bring a prop to illustrate something that has happened. They're not able to do that. That's considered a demonstration, even if it's a small thing. Okay, there'll be some, your time has been withdrawn. But for this guy, they allowed it, even though they could have easily utilized that rule. And if he wanted to fight the rule, sure, sue them. Go to court. Get a judge to adjudicate, to say that they were wrong and that somehow you weren't, well, demonstrating. Reaction. So in a statement, Ruby Mendez Mota, the interim advocacy director for the ACLU of Idaho, said, quote, "We remind lawmakers that they represent all of their constituents, even those with dark skin, even those who don't speak English as a first language, even those they disagree with. And we remind them it is their duty to hold themselves accountable to a high standard, or we will do it for you. What this committee did here is support racist behavior and is absolutely unacceptable," end quote. Nixon Matthews, chair of the Idaho Queer Caucus, a statewide network of LGBTQ+ leaders, organizers, and community members, in a separate statement called the committee's decision to allow David Pettinger to testify a, quote, "blatant act of racism," end quote. Matthews testified against HB 704 before the House Business Committee minutes after David appeared, objecting to David's testimony. Quote, "I have to say, what happened today is unacceptable. That man should have been removed from this room. There are people who are watching this. Matthews said before Wheeler cut them off. Quote, Mr. Matthews, that's enough. I'm going to ask you to please take your seat. Wheeler said, we handled that in a way we best saw fit. Thank you for your time. Thanks for being here. So they walk him down. The guy complaining about the guy that never should have had a voice there. They walk that guy down while allowing the racist demonstrator to demonstrate racism. Okay, this is not David's first offense, ladies and gentlemen. There was an arrest involving old David, January 2021, at the Idaho Capitol building on a warrant from the Boise Police Department. David was also involved in an incident at the Boise City Hall last year when he and another man climbed the flagpole and placed a pride flag and an Oregon donor flag into a trash bag. All right. So I don't understand what the wisdom of the committee could have been. To me, it completely lacked wisdom to allow someone to demonstrate in all of the ways you can demonstrate. They allowed a person to demonstrate racism when demonstration is against the rules of decorum during public comment. What say you, dear brother?
Well, first of all, what have you subjected me to have to watch?
Right.
When I was in grade school, we had the DARE program, and I don't know if they, I think Nancy Reagan started or something like that, to just say no to drugs. I don't know if they're still doing DARE, but if they are, they need to replace the cute little lion, all those little things, with videos like this. They need to say, look, this is what happens when you do meth or when you do heroin. You wind up making a fool out of yourself and a fool out of those around you. It's as American as apple pie. Somebody does something racist. Somebody else complains about the other person doing the thing that's racist. And then the person that complains is the one that gets in trouble. I'm not a huge proponent of stopping people from embarrassing themselves. If I was on the council, I certainly would let him say whatever he wanted to say. But then immediately follow up with, okay, clearly that person is a racist lunatic. And we denounced that kind of behavior. And it didn't seem like, even to this day, there hasn't been a satisfactory response from this body. But we got people walking. I think this is the first time I've been a part of this portion of the show. What in the hell Red said. So there are people like that walking all over the place. I'm from Alabama.
Right.
There are people who show up to our city council meetings and all kind of crazy madness. It's American as apple pie.
Yeah. We shall see if an update comes from it.